Hello, everyone. You are listening to Kingdom Stories, where we tell stories of hope and power from the lives of everyday Christians just like you and me. It's my hope that these stories encourage you in your walk with the Lord and remind you weekly about how awesome our God is. Hey, everybody. I'm here with my sister Katrina. Katrina, you want to say hi?
Hey, everybody.
All right, Katrina, you want to go ahead and jump right in and give us a little background, who you are, where you came from, a little bit of your story, and then kind of dive right in?
Sure. So I'm Katrina Garcia, and I have a little bit of a story to tell you. And I just really pray that people that need to hear my story would be able to have an opportunity to let it just sit with them because when you're in the middle of your own story, you don't realize anybody else is going to hear it.
Hmm.
You're not thinking about somebody else could be going through what you're going through or need to hear how you got through it. So I will start back. I'm half white and half black. I'm mixed, and with the last name Garcia, everybody thinks I'm Hispanic. So that's fun to play with all the time. People speak Spanish to me all the time. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. I'm so sorry. And for those who can't see me, I also look Hispanic, so it just doesn't help the situation. So my parents, they got divorced when I was 5,
Wow.
and I didn't know what was going on. I just was like, okay, you know, you're little, you just think that your life is how everybody else's life goes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my dad was in the military, so I knew what it was like to move around a lot. And when they got divorced, I had some time that I lived with one parent and some time that I lived with another parent. So they didn't share custody. They just one got us in court, and then after so much time, another parent won us over. And
Wow.
in that situation, there was lack in each one. And with one of them, there was a lack of relationship. And I'm sure a lot had to do with it because it was right after the divorce. But I didn't have relationship with that parent. And you just felt lonely as a child.
Hmm.
I also have 2 siblings. So I really didn't know what to do during that time. I just didn't know where my other parent was. So many years later, my other parent won us over in court. And when we went into that situation, there was relationship, but there was lack of finances.
Hmm.
Like there wasn't much food available. And when it came like school years and get school clothes and things like that, we didn't have the money to get school clothes. And I remember thinking, why? What's the, why is it like this? Why do we have to wait in
Mm-hmm.
order to get new socks or new underwear? We didn't have to do that before. And I didn't
Hmm.
understand what the problem was. So at the time, we had cousins that I viewed was rich. And
Hmm.
we would go over to their house during Christmas. They had a huge house. And at Christmas time, they had the biggest tree I'd ever seen. And they
Wow.
had food and they had gifts. And they even had gifts for us, which amazed me because I was like, we don't even hardly see you guys. And you have gifts for us. Like, how do you have the money to do that? And so I asked my mother one day, how can they do that? How is it that she said, well, they went and got their careers first before they had children. And that set inside of me before they had children. And then that kind of makes you think, oh man, I set my parents back because they had me before they had a career. And it's like, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to my kids one day. So I thought, okay, Katrina, what can you do differently? How can you set up like that so you have the big house, you have the food, you can get gifts for people you don't even hardly see ever, right? So I was still in elementary school when I was thinking about it, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and graduate high school. I'm gonna go to college. Then I'll get married, and then I'll start a career, and then after that I'll have kids. So I had
Hmm.
it like mapped out, my long-term goals, mapped out what I was going to do, and then I tried to kind of figure out ages and stuff. I didn't really know, like, okay, I think at 20 this is when this is supposed to happen, and 20 that's supposed to happen. That's when you're a big adult. So when you're in your 20s, right? So At 11 years old is when I got saved. I was really the only one because it was my uncle, the one that led me to the Lord, and my parents, they weren't saved, and I was the oldest of my siblings, and none of my cousins or anybody else was saved. So trying to kind of figure it out on my own at that time. And by 15 years old, I found myself crying out to God because my long-term plans were starting to get mixed up. They were getting out of order. And that was because I was due to have a baby after my 16th birthday. So I was like, this is not what I planned. I don't want to be poor.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like really confusing time at that time. But the one thing that I can definitely say is that God protected my son and I through that period. That time, which I would say is a vulnerable time, because not only was I a minor, but I was taking care of a baby and I didn't even know how to take care of myself yet. So he protected us in a lot of different situations and a lot of different ways it could have turned out, but it didn't turn out that way. But even during that time, I never lost sight of my goals, of my what I wanted to do long term, even though it was completely backwards. The kid came first. And during that time, I just had to look at, okay, my timeline is going to be different, but I'm not going to give up on graduating high school. Part of that reason was because my parents did not graduate high school. So my father went on to have a career. He ended up joining the military, and that's what he did as far as schooling. And my mom, they got married and then started their life from there. But I was like, you never graduated high school? Really? What? Like, doesn't everybody do that? And the answer is no, everybody doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, well, at least start with that, graduate high school. And so I pushed and pushed and pressed and tried as hard as I could to get credits as quickly as possible, making sure I was committed to going to school and getting everything done that was requested of me, and then even, meeting with teachers and things like that. So I ended up graduating at 17 years old. I was supposed to graduate a year later than I did, but because of all the work that I was doing, God actually sped up everything. And when I say that, it wasn't like I was calculating, oh, I need this credit, I need to do that, I need to do this. No, it was more like, get to school, you're taking care of the baby. We stayed up. I woke up all these times throughout the night to do this. I have to get him to daycare. I got to go. It was more like that, about just doing what I needed to do. And in the process of doing that, I was able to skip a year. And I totally believe that that was God. It wasn't by my doing that I skipped a year. At 18 is when I actually married a man that loved me and my son. The original father, he ended up abusing me after I had his son. So I was not with him anymore, and I was a single mom through high school. And then after high school, I'd already met my fiance at the time, and he absolutely loved my son. He'd get off of work and he would come home and play with my son. And I was like, this is amazing. Playing with him, it's not all about me, it's both of us. He's on his knees on the floor playing with him. And I was like, okay, I think he's it, right? He's it. So anyways, after that, we actively pursued a deeper relationship with God. Even when we got engaged, we made a pact and said, look, before we actually do get married, let's seek God and know him better. Let's have a deeper relationship with him. We both agreed that's what we were going to do. So then when we did get married, we both had jobs. We were both involved with ministries at church, and I was going to college. And so very, very busy about the things of God and taking care of my son. But at the same time, it was also exhausting. You're highly active. It was exhausting. And so I just kept pressing and still felt like the need that I had to keep working on my goals, because I still felt like I was behind and where I was supposed to be at according to the agenda and schedule that I made for my life, for my long-term goals. And what kept pushing me forward was saying, I don't want to be poor. I don't want my kid to be in lack. So that's why I was going to college and working. I had this tiny human living, breathing, growing body. And between all that, going to school, working, and everything, I would listen to Christian radio. And I was allowed to listen to Christian radio at work, not because anybody was Christian. It was just because if we had it low enough, we were allowed to listen to the radio at our desk. And they were the first ones to bring up this concept about staying at home. And I was like, that's not for me. Just listen to the next song, right? And then they still kept presenting it, staying at home. I think I knew maybe one or two women that stayed home, and I did not respect it at all. I just thought, well, those women are the women that don't want to do anything with their life. A complete judgment. I was like, they have no vision, they have no plan, they don't contribute financially. And for me, I was still in the mindset of, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder. I don't even know how you do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to be successful. I have plans. I have my to-do list. You know, I have my goals. And for women that stayed at home, I just completely judged them. So there was a day, though, where they presented on the Christian radio the fact that you could be paying more to go to work than to not work. And it could be more costly. And I was like, what? I never thought about that. So when they did their session and talked about it, went over things, I was like, I'm going to have to look at that at some point. Like, I don't think I'm called to be home at all, but I'm going to have to look at that at some point. And I did. I took the numbers. I looked at it. I looked at how much I was making, how much it was costing me to get to work. I was taking public transportation, how much it was costing for daycare for me to go to work, and how much it was costing to have meals while you're out. And it was absolutely costing a lot more to be there than it was not to.
Wow.
And I was amazed. So after that, I looked at it. I thought about it. I was like, I don't want to. Like, no, I still have to press forward towards my goals. If I'm not working, then how am I going to essentially level up? How am I going to have the background, the experience that I need to? And at the time I was working for the state, and I was doing presentations for the job that I was doing. I was recruiting young people into the program that I was doing, because that's essentially what we're supposed to do. And they were at-risk youth. And so it was like, it was doing all these good things, but I started to feel this pull to come home. No, it's not for me. But I was starting to feel it. And I would say that was like the wooing of God, right? And in that time, I was like, how can we do it? How can we do it financially if I'm not contributing somehow? But then I had the facts too. I had the facts written down, like, you're not actually contributing. So, so finally, one day I'm sitting at my desk and I'm praying. I used to always pray at lunchtime. And I said, okay, God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And at that moment, I felt a supernatural peace come all over me. I'm like, wow. I hadn't felt that before. This peace that we pray about and we talk about and we see in scripture, the peace that surpasses all understanding had now fallen upon me. And I'm like, wow, this is what he's talking about. This is the presence of God, where your troubles go away at that time.
Wow.
And so I knew it was the right decision. I told my husband. He's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, oh, no, I'm just doing what God told me to do. He told other people. Those people told me, don't do it. You shouldn't be doing that. You need to be working. So there was people that were not supportive of it all. But if it wasn't for the experience that I went through, I wouldn't have been able to stand on it. I was able to stand on the assurance that God gave me and the peace that I had. And I was like, I've never felt anything like that before. So I'm doing it. I'm sorry, we don't agree. I can't even explain to you what my plan is. But that's what I did. And I think my son was around 3 years old around that time. And when I came home, I was like a deer in headlights. I had no idea what to do at home.
I love it.
I was used to being in an office setting or an educational setting in a classroom, always learning or making goals or being told what to do. So I had to figure out how to cultivate a relationship with my son. And I had to learn how to be a homemaker
Hmm.
and how to be out of the office environment. So that was a big transition on how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. I had a son that was 3 years old and I still didn't know how to be his mother. I knew how to get him dressed in the morning, get him up, and go all day long and be home by 8 p.m. to make dinner and put him to bed. That's what I knew how to do.
So that whole middle part was just gone.
Yes. So I always say with my oldest son, I missed out on those parts of his life.
Hmm.
About 6, 7 years later, by then, I had 3 children. And we were dealing with the pressures of my son being in kindergarten and homework and those types of things. And then I had 2 toddlers at home. And my husband and I decided to go to Weekend to Remember by it's a Family Life, right? Weekend to
Mm-hmm.
Remember. They had one in San Francisco. This would be the first time that we are going to go away for the weekend without the kids and be able to get our minds back in order. So we were under a lot of stress at the time, which is I think normal for young parents. And it was there I was looking into, does my oldest child have ADHD? Is this
Hmm.
something that's going on with him? I don't know what this is. And there was a thin, small book that says, it was talking about ADHD. Does your child have ADHD? And I went to go buy the book. And the cashier saw my book and she says, do you have a son with ADHD? And I said, yeah, I think I do. She goes, you should homeschool. And I was like, what? Do what? It's like, what's that? My thought inside was like, homeschool. Like, isn't that for like farmers, like their kids can't get to school, or not like 1800s? Like I had not had heard of homeschooling before.
Wow.
It was a completely foreign concept to me.
Wow.
I didn't, yeah. She was like, you should homeschool. And then she tells me the reasons why. She said that her kid had ADHD and it wasn't worth fighting them in the morning and everything you had to go through to get them to school and all the inattentiveness that you're dealing with. And they can be picky with foods and they don't want everything she was saying. I felt like she had a microscope into my life without even knowing who I was.
Wow.
I was like, when do you get off? Like, I was like, I'm gonna come find you, so you can tell me about this homeschooling thing you just said. But if you're telling me you can take those pressures off by doing this other foreign thing I hadn't heard of before, I'm completely interested. So I did. I found her, and she told me about it. Everything was weird to me, like go on field trips. I thought you had to have a class of 30 to go on a field trip. I was like, what are you talking about? I just really didn't know what she was talking about. But in that, I tried to look into it further. I didn't even know where to start at all. I remember telling a friend about it, and she was like, no, don't homeschool. They need structure. He needs structure. Don't homeschool him. He needs to be in school. And I was like, well, but I want to find out more about it. So I think it was probably the third conversation I had with her. And she said, if you're really going to do this homeschooling thing, then I know somebody. And I was like, are you kidding me? Did you know somebody that does this? I was like, so she got me talking to another woman that homeschooled that belonged to a homeschool group. Mind you, I didn't know these things existed. And from there, I found a community. I found out about CHIA, which is a huge organization that helps with homeschoolers and resources. And I found out about a whole world that was practically hiding in plain sight that I did not know existed.
Wow.
I didn't know that California was full of homeschoolers. I didn't know these people existed at all. And here was a kind of a quiet community that had so many freedoms that I wasn't aware of, and uniqueness, and brought so much to my family. And here I am, this person that was totally goal minded with this corporate ladder mindset, to now I'm doing a complete 180. I'm homeschooling my kids, staying home, teaching them. And, today I went from the one kid that it was so stressful to take care of him and figure out my life and figure out who I was and take care of him, to now today I have 5 children and have faith of how God takes care of them, takes care of me. And I know that I do things completely different than when I first started out.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that I'm doing, I try to involve them with. So I've had part-time jobs throughout my homeschooling career, and I've also done my own businesses. And I make sure that I include them so they know what I'm doing. Like, I can't say I ever knew when my dad went to work what he was doing or what it looked like. But for my kids, I involve them. I will bring them to my job or try to get an opportunity to go to their dad's job so they can see what he's doing. And if I'm doing things as far as working at home, then I include them and I try to teach them what I'm doing. And now I know how to be involved. I know how to cultivate relationship with my kids. I also, when I'm doing training with others, or if I'm learning, if I'm in training myself, I will teach them what I learn. So I'm not dependent on just telling them what's their grade level.
Mm-hmm.
I want to teach them adult things that I'm learning, because I don't want them to wait to my age to know what I'm learning.
Yeah.
Right? So I felt like there was a lot of things that I was not exposed to in life for various reasons. There's various reasons. And I want to expose them to as much as I can, as much as the world that I can. So even if I can't explore the world and go to the world, I want to bring it to them and have them experience it and just know who they are a little earlier in life than I did. So a couple of things that I learned through that was, between each goal that we have, there is growth that takes place between those goals. So I had said, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And sometimes we wonder, well, how come this hasn't happened yet? Or you might have got word or prophecy, or in prayer, God confirming this is going to happen for you. But there's growth that has to take place between A and B.
Mm.
And we get caught up on the time. How much time is it going to take? Is it going to happen now? When's it going to happen? But I don't think that God's stuck on a timeline like we get stuck on timelines. He's more relationship and growth. And when you accomplish to the point where he wants you to be in that life experience, then he puts you in the time you're supposed to be in, as opposed to, oh, it should take me only a year to do this, and then I'll be able to do blah, blah, blah. So good example. Oh, I'm going to get my degree by this year, and once I do that, I'll be able to move into this career. And I don't think that he moves in that way. I think if it takes you 10 years to get that degree, he's still going to put you in the position you were meant to be in at that time.
I like that. So how have you seen God bless your obedience? Because there was that initial obedience, right? You know, making that 180. How have you seen God bless you from there?
There's a couple of things. The first thing that happened was I had my second son and got to see the first time he walked, and the first time he spoke, and the first time he did all his first, I was there for. So that was some healing there, and to say, oh, wow, this is the way it looks, and then after that, I got to do that with each of my children. But the other thing too is being home with my children. I can actually say I know my children better than anybody else. You hear that all the time. Oh, you're the parent. You know your children better than anybody else. I think that's a very general saying to say. I don't think that's true. if your child is away from you most of the day, somebody else knows your child better than you. But I could say with my kids, I do know them, and I do understand why God put me in the position to be with them. So another thing that happened was when I decided to homeschool, I didn't just go, oh, I'm going to homeschool. That's it. And that's not what happened. What happened was I got introduced to the concept. I started looking into it. And the first thing I did was look at K-12 because there was commercials all the time for it. I was like, oh, look, they get a free computer. We're going to do that. Get a free computer. And I looked into their scheduling. I checked out Chia and all that. But what I did first, I didn't just say I'm going to homeschooling. I went to a private school, a Catholic private school. And I set up an appointment for him to go to school there. And I told them right off the bat, I don't really have the money for this. And they told me, we have scholarships and everything. And so we made an appointment. And before the appointment came up, I felt God telling me, don't go. And I was like, but I already made an appointment. And I'm like one of those sticklers. I follow the rules. Okay.
I gave them my word. I said I'd be there.
Yeah. I was battling and I was like, no, but I have to go. Maybe I could just make something up and be like, oh, it just didn't work out, when I go, after I go, because I already said I'm going to go. And I just kept saying, no. So I called them up, very nervous, like I'm going to be in trouble. It's funny where we get these perceptions. Like, I'm going to be in trouble with them. They're like school authorities, like, I said, I'm going to have to cancel my appointment. She goes, okay. So, you want to postpone? Let's set up another date. And I go, no. And she's like, okay. Like, you want to tell me why? And I was like, no. No. And I was nervous. She said, okay. I think I hung up the phone like shaking and sweating. I'm not supposed to do that. You have school authorities. We're accountable to the schools. Right? And after that, in prayer, God told me, after that, and I decided I'm going to go ahead and homeschool, God told me, you took your son out of the enemy's camp. And I was like, wow, I did? I was like, wow, he said the enemy's camp. Someone that's against me, against us, against my family. Wow. I took him out of the enemy's camp. And it was not even the motivation. I wasn't trying to be against anybody. I was like, what is the best I could do for him? Because he was struggling. And by that time, by second grade, I was already battling with the schools and the school district to get him the services he needed, to get him help, to get him one-on-one, to help him. Because at this point, he wasn't reading. He still couldn't read. And I was like, what is wrong with you guys? He is going to be in third grade. He should know how to read already, right? That is your job. Oh my goodness, the naiveness of what is somebody else's job and what's your job, and how much influence you have. So that was another blessing, was to be able to be there for him, because by that time he thought it was his fault he couldn't read, and he called himself trash by then.
Wow.
I'm trash. I can't read. And I would say, your dad and I don't call you those names. I don't understand why you're calling yourself those names. By then he'd been bullied. He'd been into fights, and he's just a little guy. And he wasn't starting the fights. And I would go to school, and the teacher would tell me, some kid grabbed him and did this. Some kid did that. He'd come home from school in first grade, was all scratched up. His clothes were dirty. I was like, what happened to you? He told me that a kid took him and drug him across the schoolyard, and you lift up his shirt, and he had blood on his ribs and blood on his elbows, and so there was a lot I was already battling. But I had him in school because that's what you're supposed to do. Put your kid in school. And it might take you a minute to find the right school. It may not be your local one, but that's what you're supposed to do. So when I had pulled him out right before third grade, he'd already been to 4 schools, trying to find the right one where he wasn't going to get bullied, where he was going to get some attention. And when I had pulled him out, like I said, we were looking at, did he have ADHD? He just started on the lowest dose of Ritalin because I was completely against chemicals and things and fought it for a long time. But the teachers were just having such a hard time with him that I finally agreed to the lowest form, which was like 5 milligrams for him. And when I made the decision to homeschool him, he was happy that he was going to be home. And then I got him off the medication, helped him detox off of that. And when I had been with the homeschool group and involved with a co-op, I learned that he was just allergic to red 40 chemical in your food. And when I took that out of his diet, he completely was not hyper anymore at all. And a lot of his anxiety and ADHD look exactly the same, was from all the bullying and everything he was having at school. So he got to go through healing once we started homeschooling. And I completely just did the whole deschooling, unschooling thing. I didn't even know how to name it at that time. I was just like, we don't have a desk. We're going to be on the floor. We're not going to even use paper with lines on it. We're going to use a whiteboard. We're going to... and none of those ideas were mine. It all came from going to a homeschool conference, talking with other moms, seeing what it looks like. I didn't know what homeschool looks like at all. I thought I needed to get desk and have a chalkboard like teachers and things like that. So all of that came from talking to other moms, understanding how boys function, and giving him freedom and let him have healing through all that he had experienced, and of course I had to heal from mom guilt. All the stuff that he went through and the stresses that I was going through as he was going through those things as well too. So,
So what I'm hearing is that when you obeyed God's call to turn around, he blessed you by bringing peace into your home.
Yeah. I would say that it just came to me now, but there's peace in the chaos, because each time I felt God calling me to do something or take another step that I knew nothing of, in the obedience, he would give that healing, give that peace that you didn't realize you needed. When I came home from working, being a stay-at-home mom, I didn't realize how much I needed to just rest instead of pushing and pushing and pushing. And when I decided to homeschool, when I was looking at doing it, it looked like work. It totally looked like I have to figure out curriculum and I got to do this and I got to do that. But my son was crying out for that, and I didn't know that he was crying. He couldn't communicate that, that he needed that. He was at the point where he was crying every day after school for hours, 3 or 4 hours straight.
Wow.
We couldn't figure out why. We couldn't figure out what was going on with him. And we tried all different strategies, from being sweet and kind to being the disciplinary to laying hands and praying for him. We didn't know. We had no idea. It took time to see changes. People told me that they saw changes in him when we started homeschooling. They said for the first time he would look them in the eye when he was speaking.
Wow.
And I was like, really? I didn't know that. Even now in homeschooling, so I have 3 adult children now and 2 that are still minors. I still get compliments from people that say, wow, your kids have really good behavior. You just know you're just trying to walk with God and build a relationship and be closer to God. That's all you're trying to work on doing. But when other people tell you that they can see that, it's reaffirming, and that blesses you,
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's just like what I did way back then was just doing everything scared and trying to move forward in the faith. And then today, I'm that mom that has experience. I'm the mom that can help provide answers, and be the person in place, especially for during this time when we have a pandemic and everybody is being forced into this lifestyle.
Yeah.
That I can say, hey, I can help you with this. I can help you with this. And you can be as scared as you want and still end up doing a good job somehow.
Yeah. So if I recall correctly, you're actually setting up a support group for homeschooling families.
Yes.
You want to put a little bit of a brief plug in for that?
Yeah. I recently just started a support group called Faith Homeschool Collaborative, where you may have your faith, but do you know where that faith stands right now with everything that's going on and all the information that you're getting? Well, I just wanted to be able to have a support group for other people, for other parents and people that are being in the position that have to homeschool their kids, whether they're a grandparent or the uncle that's stuck at home with the kids, to be able to have support and understand what is homeschooling. How do you do it? How are you qualified for it? Where do you go for resources? And the kids that are being stuck at home, how can they have friends or meaningful interactions with other kids as well in a lifestyle that they're not used to? So I wanted to provide that for them. I created on a Facebook group called Faith Homeschool Collaborative. And I have a lot of things in store that I think will really benefit anybody who needs it, from workshops. I'm going to have Facebook Lives where not only will I be speaking, because I don't think I'm the end all by any means, and I don't think I'm the all-in-one expert at all, but I'm going to bring in other experts and people that have homeschooling experience, from teaching to being the child that was the homeschooler. So
That's awesome. Well, thanks for telling us your story and showing us there's hope in the midst of a pandemic. I think it's a good reminder that that life doesn't go on hold just because there's a pandemic. And we can still press into loving our families more and developing relationships.
Yes, and have peace during the chaos.
I love that. All right. Thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
If you like the story today, please don't hesitate to spread the love. Share it, like it, and subscribe to hear more. If you want to share a story from your life about an encounter with God, please don't hesitate to email me at jesse@newawakeningministries.org. Stay safe and remember, the kingdom is among us.